Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Trends Talk. I'm Sarah Sladek, your host. I'm so glad you're here. And I am super excited about our guest. As you will see, I am doing this remotely from a different location, and she is also on location at the Grit Awards. Katie Mehnert, come to the stage, turn on that camera. Those of you who know me, you have probably learned a lot about Katie through my speeches, through my books. I'm a super fan of the work that she does. So I'm really excited for her to be here. So Katie, tell us about the Grit Awards. Where are you at in the world today, and what are the awards?
Yeah, so we are getting ready for the seventh or eighth, I can't keep track, annual Grid Awards and Best Energy Workplaces. This is where we bring together the best of the best in the energy and climate space. So companies, teams, individuals, folks who are focused on sustainability, startups, um, employee resource groups. It started as a thing at the end of our conference several years back where with the last hour kind of dedicated to recognition. And now we get hundreds and hundreds of applications. And so we've got about 300 and something folks coming tomorrow. Really excited about hosting everybody at the House of Blues Houston. So getting
Woo!
ready, yeah, getting ready for that. So always like to recognize the great work that people are doing for energy and the energy transition.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to share for our audience as you are logging in or observing as we're streaming, you have the option of submitting questions as we go through this. I have 5 questions for Katie. So I'm going to put her on the hot seat for half an hour. But yes, we would love to see your questions pop in as well. And so feel free to add them. And just by way of introduction, I am proud to say that Katie is the founder of what was first Pink Petro and then became Ally. And she is kind of a superstar. She's built a really vibrant, robust community in a very short period of time. She has run the New York Stock Exchange bell. I just admire all that you've accomplished in a very short period of time. And we're going to dive into that today, but it's really focused on workforce development. Such a hot topic right now. So I'm going to ask for Q1 to come up. We're going to do round one. Here we go. All right, Katie, what current stat or data point best summarizes the need for organizations to prioritize workforce development?
Well, gosh, there are a bunch of statistics, but I think the one that would really stand out to me right now is that 62% of all people are disengaged
Mhm.
with their work. And so, one of the things I talk a lot about right now is this purpose economy that we've entered, where people just want to work and do something they love instead of just work. And so we see a lot of people who are on autopilot. We see a lot of stress in the workplace. We see a lot of change, right, happening in the workplace. Gallup does a study every year on the state of the global workforce, and this statistic is costing our economy $8 trillion in lost productivity. So, I think about the money side of it, we got to do something to get people more engaged. But when I think about the people side of it, it's all about, are you doing something you love versus something you have to do? And I know at Ally, that's what we're focused on, is trying to help people solve big, big issues and give people meaning and purpose in their everyday work and life.
Yes. And as a follow up question to that for our audience, you have a great story in that you were kind of raised observing the oil and gas and energy industry, and you saw that need, that gap that existed in terms of workforce. So tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, gosh. Um, many years ago when I was working in big oil, I was working for Shell at the time. One of the things we kept talking about was this big crew change and the need to shift more people into knowledge positions, positions in learning more about the industry, being able to address the challenges of the future. And I kept hearing about this crew change that was going to happen. And what we've seen is we've seen a lot of crew leave, but what
Yeah.
we haven't seen is that transition and that skill set, right? However, we have seen an increase in people excited about the promises of what we can do to address climate change, and the energy industry is right at the thick of that. So I think that's what makes this an exciting time. There's definitely going to be a labor shortage. We've been talking about the shortage for a while now, but I want to say in the next 5 to 10 years, we're really going to start to see those numbers getting far harder and harder to meet. And this is why companies are going to have to really, really, really buckle down and focus on attracting and developing and retaining the best talent.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about purpose, which we'll talk about more about that as well. But let's go to round two. Next question. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so you've organized and grown a very visible, successful mission based organization and community in record time. I just want to emphasize that within a matter of a few years. And so many organizations out there work and work and work and struggle at doing that over a long period of time. So it's really impressive. But what advice do you have to pass along to others that are seeking to do the same? And it might come back to purpose, but I'm so curious to hear your take on this, Katie.
So, so first of all, it's taken 10 years. So we turned 10 in a month. So 10
Woohoo!
years is a long time. And when I look at where we were 10 years ago, we were in a very different place. But one of the things I tell people, there's really two things I tell people when they're looking at trying to build solutions. The first is you got to know your market. You really need to know what you're trying to solve for, right? And 10 years ago, I was trying to solve for diversity. You know, I looked and I said, there just aren't enough women. Everyone agreed. But has that changed? We're sure we're absolutely solving for diversity, but we're solving for bigger challenges as well. So you have to really evolve with the market, understand the market that you're serving. Um, and that obviously brings credibility. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you got to build relationships. And I don't think building relationships should be static. So, just in the industry you're in, I think there's so much knowledge to tap into outside of the industry that you're in. That's why you and I have known each other for years. Is we learn by hearing what other people right have gone through and have been through. So those are kind of my two big things. The last thing I would say about this though is you got to have a marathon mindset. Um, it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of people think, oh, you built this thing in record time. We built this in an optimal time, in a time when there was a need. But what we have had to do, like many other communities and other markets, is adapt right to the changing times. And so that adaptation is happening faster. So change is happening faster. So we have to be nimble as well. So you got to have a long term view on this because it is a very hard challenge, but it's very worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like I have to ask a follow-up question to that. I want to get even little grittier here. Since you're at the Grit Awards, that seems but let's get down to the nitty-gritty a little bit more. You have, okay, 10 years by some accounts is a short period of time since you went from startup to building this really robust community. As I mentioned in the intro, you have run the New York Stock Exchange bell in that time. You have become really well known in certain circles, including prominent business leaders on a national and global scale. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also have some sort of relationship with the United Nations. Is that right? I mean, big stuff, Katie. So, and would you say all this comes back to the relationships, the problem solving? Like, how are you getting in the door on some of these opportunities? It's just so amazing.
So it's interesting because um, I do struggle, like a lot of people struggle with leaning in and asking for what I want. And so, what I tell people is if you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm actually writing my third book. So, you heard it here first. My third
Woo.
book, by the time I turn 50 next December, called The Ask. And I think it doesn't come, especially, it's not a very comfortable thing for women to do, is to ask. We think we're asking for help when really we're presenting opportunity, right? So, example, how did you get to ring the bell on Wall Street? We asked, right? We had a contact who said, this would be great. Do you want to organize a group? And we said yes. And so we asked and we went to the New York Stock Exchange, right? Um, Sometimes I don't ask, sometimes I get asked. So in the last couple of years, I didn't really think that policy was going to be something that I would be super passionate about. When I started getting asked by the federal government to get more involved in energy workforce and energy workforce matters, I started to think, no, actually, this is something I could really get my arms around. So I got involved because I was asked. So I think it takes um, you got to have the courage to say, "Hey, I want to do this," right? And the worst thing that anyone could say is no. But the best thing that someone could say is yes. And so we've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of really great opportunities, but we love bringing those opportunities to our community.
Right, right. Oh, fantastic. I'm excited to hear that you have another book coming out. All right, so great advice. Ask. Get out there and do that outreach. All right, let's go to round three. Round three. All right. You, Katie Mehnert, are pushing for inclusion and change in an industry renowned for being predominantly white, male, steeped in tradition, old school hierarchy, all those things. How do you advocate for change without creating division and conflict? I get asked this question a lot, so I'm so curious what your answer is.
So my answer is you don't. If you're going to advocate for change, there will be conflict, there will be division, there will be people, there will be naysayers, there will be people who don't like what you're doing, there will be haters. I have plenty of stories around the discord and the anti-right movement across the 10 years that I've been in this space. But at the end of the day, um, you kind of have to say to yourself, what's my why in life? What am I supposed to be doing? It just gets back to purpose. I started this because I wanted to see difference and change in this industry. And I found enough people who agreed. And in fact, more than enough people, right, agree. So I used to get upset about the discomfort. I used to worry about what people thought. And if there's anything I've learned in the last decade is that's not where to put my energy. My energy and my time is best put into doing the work. And look, it's like one of my dear mentors, Vicki Hollub, who's the first female CEO of an oil and gas company, very successful in her own right. If you're not putting your foot on the gas and running the ball and running your strategy, then what are you doing? And so at the end of the day, change is not about comfort. It's actually about discomfort. And I've gotten used to things not being comfortable.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And you can't be everything to everyone. You have to pick your place and your purpose and your goal, and you just have to move. And
That's
either
right.
people will support that and move with you, or they don't, and they find other avenues, and that's okay, right? But
Well,
it
and I will say too, like a lot of change and a lot of discomfort and conflict, that's really with the other party. It really is about, are they ready to
yeah.
embrace the change? And I think, when you look at the world we live in today, it's chaos. It's chaotic. Look at the political,
Mm,
situation we're in. Look at the division that we have in this world.
right.
And so you have to ask yourself and prioritize and really soul seek and say, okay, what am I here to do? Because I
Mm,
got limited time. And I think once you hit that moment where you realize, you know what, I got a lot to do and I got a lot to say and I got a lot to get to. And you
mhm.
start focusing your energy right on what matters. The rest is just noise in the peanut gallery, as I like to say. So,
Yes. Right on. Right on. Okay. Let's go to round four. Okay, very specifically, what are three steps organizations can take to effectively engage your generation? So you are Gen X, right? But also, let's add to that because I'm also curious. You talking about diversity. I know a piece of that you're passionate about is also age diversity. So, but let's start specifically with those Xers because
so
I just want to preface this. Earlier, you talked about Gallup. Um, they just came out with the latest stats on employee engagement. They've been tracking it since the year 2000. The stats haven't improved. And now we have more Xers in leadership. And it's kind of like, oh man, we thought the Xers were going to motivate change. And we're seeing a little bit of curmudgeon and frustration and apathy kick in. People are tired, and I think that's why your work is so admirable, because you're driven and you've stayed true to this vision. But as we think about some of the experts in the workforce and the generations that are coming up, how do we engage people, get them re-inspired and excited?
well, I can speak from my generation. So first and foremost, you know, I come from a generation that was pre technology and post technology. So I like to say that we have our left foot in the old world and our right foot in the new world. And if there's anything that I know I appreciate, it's this. It's having a conversation. It's critical thinking. It's taking problems and dissecting them right into and asking the hard questions like why this, why that. Um, I think Gen X wants to is very big on dependability, and I also think that we're really big on sustainability. So we're looking for the long term, right? What are those long term solutions? Not just, what's that immediate quick fix? Um, and then I think that, believe it or not, flexibility. We're like the next generation, the generations that are younger than my generation say that they're about flexibility. We're about flexibility too. You know, we were the first generation to grow up with both parents working. And so, you know, we value having that ability to be flexible. We also value having the ability to create and innovate without, being stood over. So I struggle myself with, hey, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be micromanaged. Whereas some of my younger, employees and some of the people that I work with are in the next generation want more oversight, right? They want more hand holding, right, with projects. So for me, it's about dependability, it's about flexibility, and it's truly about that. Like I said, the being able to value kind of the old world and the new world.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just want to have a real human conversation, and that means not with the thousands of channels that we have today, distracting our work. So that's where I come from.
Right. Okay. So then, and you have been, obviously, because a huge part of your purpose is workforce development. So you're thinking about also the next generations, and you're thinking about change and all those things. From your bird's eye point of view, what are some of the trends you're observing in regards to younger generations coming in? And I know you're specifically to your industry, but tell us a little bit about that.
Well, look, 76% of Gen Zs in the US consider climate change one of their biggest
Yeah.
concerns, and 37% say it's their top concern. So their passion for the environment is not just a trend, but it's a deep rooted commitment that influences their career choices.
Mhm.
But I don't think this is just about Gen Z. They are shaping for sure the world of work. Um, but they're architecting what I consider kind of a sustainable pathway to what a new form of capitalism could look like, right? We talk about purpose, we talk about planet, we talk about profit, we talk about all of and people, right? Those four things can coexist. So I think it's very exciting time to have them. in the workforce. They're obsessed with authenticity. They prize and embrace diversity. Um, and meaningful work is what drives their motivation. So that's why we're excited because, it used to be that, you just got to have these skills to do a certain job. And that's absolutely a number 100%, right? But if we start looking at motivation and purpose and creativity and drive and innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, those are things that you can't measure very effectively today, at least. We're excited because we're building tools to try and help people find those things and to help companies find those things in potential candidates so that we can get people doing what they love, driving purpose.
Yeah. I love that. And if we flip it on the other side of the spectrum and we talk about from the company perspective, and we think about, okay, companies are struggling to engage employees. Where are some of the biggest gaps you're observing in how companies are approaching workforce development, employee engagement, employee relations, all of that, management? What are some of the big gaps you're seeing that it's like, oh my gosh, this is a huge part of that employee engagement problem? You need to change this and things will be better.
So, first and foremost, I do believe there's just I'll answer this kind of from two dimensions. The first is, I think we've overcomplicated work. I think that there are too many tools, there are too many channels, there are too many things that we are expected to do. And I think that corporations have this more with less mentality, do more with less, do more with less. No, that's what the Industrial Revolution was about. Okay. Less is more.
Mm-hmm.
So, intention, purpose, what do we really need to do? And so, I challenge companies to really think about, what do you need to do? Many years ago, I was a manager in a team, global people all over the world. It was 20 people. And I said, what if we just stop producing those reports? And everyone, got all, freaked out. And I said, let's just stop. Let's see if anyone notices. And do you know that no one noticed about the reports that stopped getting generated? So, I
Mm-hmm.
think employers really need to think about what truly matters in their business and then get people focused on what matters and remove all of the excess because right now that is killing our productivity level. The second thing is we need to be committed to sustainability, ESG, DEI, all these three-letter acronyms that are woke and bad, right? This stuff isn't going to go away, okay? This generation is pushing very hard on the people element. Long gone are the days where it's just about money. It is truly about what people do and what people get up every day to do. And let me tell you, this generation is pushing really hard on, do you care about the environment? Do you care about
Yeah.
people? Do you care about people's rights? Do you care about women's rights? Do you care about so the social and political element of what's happened just in the last 10 years since we started, things have completely change. So companies need to realize that this is such a new world. There is no, we can only think about this in one dimension. We really have to think about this in multiple dimensions.
True, true. I agree 100%. We had a question from the audience because I said the words age diversity. And the question was, does that mean 5 decades on work teams? So, yeah, age diversity meaning, yes, we need to think about bringing in new ideas, new people at younger ages. That's how I interpret age diversity, that we are no longer hierarchical and only measuring success by experience alone, but rather every generation has something to learn, something to teach. So that was a good question. Anything you'd add on that, Katie, in terms of age diversity and why it's important?
Say that again.
Is there anything you'd add to answer that question on age diversity and why it's important in the workplace?
No, what I will say though is I do think that um, how we were shaped as young people
Yeah.
really has a lot to do with how we're going to behave and to act in the workplace. I'll give you a good example. I hear my kids, friends all the time say, I'm so worried about my kid and, they've got all these disasters and stuff. Yeah. My daughter has been through COVID, a handful of hurricanes. This is probably the most resilient generation because they've not known anything other than
Right.
disasters, chaos. So I think the key is to look back on what were some of the big things that shaped your childhood and your early days, right? I
Hmm.
do think it'll be interesting to see because kids are starting to become way more self aware than we ever were. I mean, when I was 14, I didn't know all the things that my daughter knows about herself, which is a little creepy, because it's like, oh, dating means different things at 14 than it does at, 20 and 30 and 40, right?
Yes.
But, um, but I think it'll be interesting to see how how these things shape us, and the next generation for the future. But you got to look back and really understand your past and what your experiences have collectively contributed to your personal and your professional life. They have a lot to do, right, with how we respond to the
Oh,
world around us.
oh yeah, definitely. All right, we have time for one more question, and it is round five. All right. So we've talked about it a little bit, but I just want to delve one step further. What are some additional trends we haven't talked about? What are you currently watching? What are you advising others to prepare for, Katie, as a visionary leader yourself?
So one of the things I'm talking with my clients about, I'm really excited that we're kind of entering this new space, is around the movement of the workforce. So we're really good, especially in the industrial companies, the industrial markets, and manufacturing and energy and all of these things. We're very good at managing the movement of product or the movement of an asset or asset management. We need to start thinking about how are we going to track the workforce? So the workforce moves. We used to not move. We weren't migrating, right?
Yeah,
We stayed in one spot. You went to school, that school produced great graduates and X degrees, and then those people went and worked for the town, the local facility, right?
right.
It's not happening anymore. So
Mm-mm.
we need a way to think about the workforce in totality. Um, I liken it to supply and demand. We're really good at managing widgets on boats in the middle of nowhere. But wouldn't it be a fascinating experience if we could manage and understand the kind of available talent we have, right, nationwide on a geo level, right? If the government just starts to invest in different types of technologies, or a new plant is put in, a company can come in and assess, right, the local workforce using data and tools. So I think that we need to get much more intelligent
Mhm.
about the workforce and start managing the workforce the way we manage our physical assets. Start really tracking and understanding, right, the movement of that. And I think that will help us as we address these big challenges in the workforce ahead of us. The last thing I will say is everyone's worried about AI, and I'm not. Because I actually think that AI is going to eliminate the work that needs to be automated, and it's going
Mm.
to open up a whole different element of jobs for us to be doing, to focus our time and our attention, right, on developing skills in a totally different space. So instead of worrying about AI, I tell my clients embrace it because it's not going away. It's
Yeah.
staring us down. And what's happening just in 2 months and 2 days and you know 2 years. I mean, so much is happening so quickly. So we need to embrace these tools and start leveraging the power of intelligent workforce.
Beautiful advice. I love that. Yes, our humanity isn't going away. And AI will allow us to be more creative and innovative. Thank you for being here on Trends Talk, Katie. We are out of time, but it was such a pleasure to chat with you about trends and change and purpose in your world. So thank you for sharing that. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I'm Sarah Sladek. Stay tuned for next month's Trends Talk.